you can just maybe take two parts of it, and one of them will be like 8 Parkers, Kenpo Karate, and that's the one that I train with, or with Master Brian Arnis. And then the other part of it is Chief Altiero. It's Kenpo also, but it's what they call the Hawaiian Kenpo, and they do their stuff just a little bit harder than Parker. But in Parker is more combination movement with his hands and more speed, where Chief is just a little bit slower. Well, within Chief's system, they do a lot of breaking, ice breaking, brick breaking, and just about any kind of breaks that. So I met Chief and we became good friends, and then I used to invite him over to the school, and he used to show us how to break, and that's when we got into it. So Chief really did contributed a lot to the growth of the studio. When we changed the Kenpo system a little bit, I put in the leg sweeps and the takedowns, because when I was training, we didn't have that much takedown. We just do the technique, cover out, and wait for the other for them to call the other technique, and then the guy will punch and you come in. But then I start using the leg trips and the takedowns, and some of the takedowns was part of the Aikido that Xian John Diamond used to teach us, like hand grabs and joint locks, and then you take the guys down, chop to the throat and all that kind of stuff. And I learned that from the Aikido part of the seminars that I used to take, and we put that in with the Kenpo technique. So as we taught it and described it, we used to say, okay, you do the techniques, finish them off with the takedown, and then punch them all the way down. Because of the concept of street defense, that's when we went to full contact, because I don't think it's right for these guys to train 2 or 3 years, go out in the street and get beat up because they were controlling all their punches and kicks. So I just made that decision to change over to full contact. And a lot of the guys that wanted full contact sparring and techniques and stuff like that, they just they used to go to the studio and check us out, and then they decide whether to quit the other school and come to our school to train because of that reason. We started out without no gear, and then just for the injury, because a lot of guys were getting cut lips, and so we went to the headgear and the boxing gloves, and then that's when it really the full contact took off, and from there we just kind of form a full contact fighting team, because in San Diego they were starting to get popular, So I said, well, let's see if some of these guys can hold up in full contact sparring, and they did. But the thing that really I think you find in our studio was the total respect that we ingrain in the kids, even the little kids. I used to tell them, okay, when you see a black belt come into this camp, I want everybody to go to the door and form a line and shake his hand.
You do it
and
now.
If you see your instructor, even if it's a green belt or a blue belt, but he's your instructor, you better go up there and shake his hand. And the kid just took into that, because you gotta show respect to the other guys that you're fighting with, or the instructors who are coming in this studio. I don't care whether he's from Timbuktu. If I found out that guy has a black belt, he's welcome in the studio and he's respected. And that really worked well for the studio. It was all,
I think
now,
with respect, I think Chief really played a big role in that.
Oh yeah,
too.
he did.
Because just the act of, see what Andy say, the act of shaking hand there's like magic to it,
Yeah.
When you reach over and you cross and you shake that person's hand, there's like a bond. And that really
Right
started
away.
from Chief was
Yeah.
so, that was his
He was,
motivation.
that's right, he was, yeah, he was
Very
right
traditional.
on.
That was the thing that he used to do was in the bathroom,
That's
you
right.
you come shake my
Come and
hand.
shake my hand, even
You
if I was
in
in
the
the bathroom,
bathroom,
sitting
that's
in the
Yeah.
toilet.
That's what I try to tell the kids now. If I see you in the bathroom, I'm in the bathroom, you come shake my hand.
Yep, you shake your one or two?
No, you couldn't wash it first.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good people come through that door in the 30 years right now. We've seen a lot of people come and go. A lot. Even some of those people that came, like Steve Edward and them and Stromis when they were still in high school, and now their kids came and trained a little bit. Steve's kids trained a little bit. Dan's kids didn't train, but Adrian's kids. Who else?
God, it's so many of them, you know, you can't remember. I mean, I bet you we had close to, what, 3,000 students went through that in the school that have.
And out of the 30 years that we got there, we only have about 36.
I think there's
black
like
belts right
40,
now.
I think there's like
40 now?
40 altogether
black
now?
belts.
40 now
Yeah.
in 30 years?
But you know, for maestros and Arnis, I think we only have like 8 or something
Yeah,
like that.
not that many.
There's not that many.
So you really have to earn it. Dan didn't give it to you.
I think that the thing that he accomplished in his training, because when he got his black belt, he was already in his 60s. He was like 66,
Yeah.
66 years old, and he went through the techniques and the forms and and the sparring with everybody.
He might not have been perfect, but he never gave up.
Yeah, and another thing too, even though he was sick. Well, not sick because but he had all this affliction. He had the prostate cancer. He had the bypass surgery, and then he was diabetic. And this guy used to run what they call ultra marathon, which is 50 miles, and he used to do that.
For a long time, you
Yeah,
said.
he did that, and that's why I remember him the most. Probably the one thing, he was in his 60s when he got his black belt. He was the oldest of all the black belts that tested at the studio.
He used to call me Sifu, wife of a Sifu.
Sifu.
Yeah.
Sifu, wife of the Sifu.
Jim, he was funny.
And he was very intelligent.
Yeah.
He could
was.
talk about any subject you could
Yeah.
imagine. But he had so much knowledge. Very intelligent person.
Jeanne was a master of Aikido, but he was so quiet when he's talking to you, you can hardly understand him because it would be almost like a whisper. You know that?
And Chief would be yelling.
Chief would be yelling, and Jeanne
He
would be just real soft spoken.
Oh, yeah.
When I first met Jeanne, he had this long hair, and then he had a ponytail when he was
Fu
on
Manchu.
undercover, and he had the Fu Manchu, and his beard was hanging about this.
He was mean
Yeah.
looking.
He was mean.
Yeah.
He was mean looking. He's right.
But Jeanne had such a deep understanding of the martial art because he would, toward the probably the last 5-10 years of his life, he would come to San Diego, and then he would stay with me at my house, and we would talk. I swear, till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning every single night, and he would just explain things to me, But on a different level, it wasn't about techniques. It was on.
Yeah. Like your
it's hard
buddy,
to-
he's your friend,
Yes. But he just knew martial arts backward and forward,
Forward.
So, and it didn't matter who he was watching. He could tell if a guy is good or not,
I can't believe Jeanne did. Because that, before he died, he was here.
I know, I remember.
He came
was going home.
and visited us. And he was staying down in California hotel. And I went and picked him up, and we
Right.
gambled for a while.
Came up here and ate.
Then he came up here and ate, visited, and he looks okay. He looks good already.
He lost a lot of weight.
Yeah. And
About 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, he died.
he died. I remember Chief, the big contribution that he gave us, and to breaking, and the tradition of karate. That's the two things that comes to mind, and
He had a terrific sense of humor.
yeah, Chief. At first, if you look at Chief,
You're scared of him, and he wants you to be.
sometimes you get you mad because he'll say something, and if you don't understand him, you get you kind of mad if you don't know him, But then after that, you give you the shirt off his back,
Yeah, he's wonderful, he was wonderful.
and so we just were more than just martial arts buddies. We were good friends, because as a matter of fact, we stood in
Compadres.
when they got married. When they got married, we
We
stood
were
in.
in the wedding,
Yeah.
and we also were their godparents of their oldest son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember him the most because he used to break ice too. Chief did. And he did the glass break.
We cut carrots.
And,
And people, yeah, Jake was
You better tell him about
Wow.
that one.
yeah, we were in Florida. Yeah, and Jeanne Damien had a girl that was a student. So Chief had this idea. This is what he said. He says, "Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have her in a bikini,
We got
And,
pictures of it.
Yeah.
and then I'm going to strap a carrot on her leg and her arm, and then I'm going to get this." He had the sharpest blade I have ever seen.
Go sharp.
It's a blade, but it's a knife that they use to cut sugarcane. It was a sugarcane knife, but it's real wide in the front and kind of narrows down, and he used that. And so we were in Florida, and they called the girl up, and she had the bikini, all right, and she just, went through the routine salutation and stuff like that, and goes up there and tapes in the carrot and the girl's leg, the arm and stuff like that, and he bowed and he looked at, I said, oh man, I hope she goes through it good. Well, anyway, did he cut the arm or the leg?
No, your arm right here, man.
Yeah.
Leg had it like this.
Right,
Yes.
it was like this, like this, yeah.
almost an offering. And he took it. Oh my goodness.
Take my arm.
Oh, he sure
And
did.
he
boy.
cut it, and then
Oh,
he went through and cut the girl right here.
and blood was just dripping out of her arm onto the stage.
She went to the hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Stitches.
needless to say, she quit the martial arts after that. She didn't come back. Jeanne said she quit.
Yeah.
It's like it just shook her up.
When Ricky started training, he was 6 years old, but he was so tiny, he was small. He was just like it's a little bit, probably smaller than JC. And we started teaching him, and he started participating in everything inside the studio and sparring and all that. Then he all of a sudden he just blossomed.
He used to run all over the place to holler at me when he was a kid.
Yeah.
To get in line or calm down. He would run and run. And his brother used to train with him, see Joe.
And then
He would
Ricky
beat up his brother all the time.
Ricky got his black belt probably when he was 14 years old, so he was one of the youngest guys beside JC. And Ricky was just a natural. He was just a natural kid when he started training with us.
It was like a little brother to me. So I would take him around places, but and yet he changed. He went from the little kid that I knew that was so cute, like 14 through 16, and then when he came back from his trip, he went on vacation somewhere, or he worked somewhere, and he came back when he was 19. He was like this huge, humongous guy. He was like 19 years old, but he must have grew twice as big as when he left. And then instead of the little kid role, he turned into this like big, tough guy role. So I would actually use him in the studio, like when people would come over, and like they would come to spar, I would always call Ricca because he was like the enforcer. I mean, not too many people could get the best of him, and he was so young still. He was only like in his early 20s, and yet he can spar absolutely anybody. And he was the only one that could do Kenpo and Arnis just as good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was just as good in both
He was a great
arts.
breaker too.
And a breaker at the same time. And then he even trained with Jeanne in Aikido.
Yeah.
He was good at those joint locks. He used to get me on the ground and twist my arm, and I had to say, Ricky, let me go.
He used to try to
Oh
go
my
technical. He said,
goodness.
"No, Ricky, do it on the younger guys."
Yeah.
And Jeanne would use him as a dummy.
Yeah. And that just goes to show how good Jeanne was, because Jeanne used to knock him around the room, And he used to make me fly around the room. But he was just so good. I mean, I miss him so much.
Well, Joe, he would come and train over there with us, and because he was the oldest one, we respect him. But once he got inside there, we just try to beat him up.
My brother had, he had a angina when he was training with us, and I think that if they would have went to the right doctor, he probably might still be living
right
today. He used to work out with all the girls in the studio, Joanne.
Even my wife thought was good partners.
They used to work out with him a lot, And Joe used to love that, working out with the girls. And one time he said, "Hey Joe, why don't you go ahead and break, with the guys at the picnic?" I said, "I can't do that, man." He said, "No, Fred will get the bricks for you, and we'll set it up for you and everything. All you have to do is just kind of breathe in a little bit and hit that brick." And he did, and he liked it. Yeah, he broke 4 bricks, and then from there on, boy, he wanted to do 5 or 6. And then he had a birthday, and he wanted to break in front of his house, and he did too. Remember that? We all went over there.
But what I remember about Brother Joe was He was in his late 50s, and he was like a blue belt or something.
Yeah.
Sifu Dan would put him up against guys that were 20-some years old. I'm not kidding you. And he would sometimes get the best out of the guys that were 30 years younger than him.
But it was just me, that's why.
Yeah. But then that's what I knew. These guys got this streak in them. You know what I mean? These two brothers and brother Joe. But they were like born fighters.
Yeah.
They could go in there and fight anybody.
Cowles Mountain, you know, which he lived right up below there. And he used to go up there, you know, Cowles Mountain about like 3,000 feet up. And they used to have a trail there. And we used to run up there. But Joe used to walk it just about every day. And one
He
day,
would go twice in a day, go in the morning and
Yeah.
in the evening.
one day he went up on top and he had a heart attack.
And nobody was around.
Nobody was around. And
Well, he had a friend that couldn't get down fast enough on the mountain to get any help
Yeah.
before the helicopter or whatever, you know. And,
So-
Well, he was dead when she found him.
Yeah.
But he always said he either wanted to die on top of Cowles Mountain or at the studio. And he got his wish.
The art of dummying. One of the skills of martial arts is not only to deliver punches, strikes, and kicks on command, but the ability to receive them. To be a good dummy, it takes focus, knowledge of the art, and a high tolerance for pain. No one knows this better than Instructor Win Lee. Instructor Win has dummied for the best of Cepeda-Abueg martial arts, from white belts to our very own Master Dan Cepeda. Instructor Win has earned the Art of Dummying Award, and here's why. Congratulations, Instructor Win.